What is state secrets and how upheld in the Supreme Court? What must be completed to engage military over other, 3-letter agencies? What must occur to allow for civilian trials?
So when somebody says post 9/11 that we've been at war and it's called the war on terrorism, do you generally agree with that concept?
I do, Senator, because Congress passed the authorization for use of military force, which is still in effect. And that was passed, of course, on September 14th, 2001, 3 days later.
Let's talk about the law in war. Is there a body of law called the law of armed conflict?
There is such a body, Senator.
Is there a body of law that's called basic criminal law?
Yes, Senator.
Are there differences between those two bodies of law?
Yes, Senator.
From an American citizen's point of view, do your constitutional rights follow you? If you're in Paris, does the Fourth Amendment protect you as an American from your own government?
From your own government, yes.
Okay. So if you're in Afghanistan, do your constitutional rights protect you against your own government?
If you're an American in Afghanistan, you have constitutional rights as against the U.S. government.
Is there a long-standing...
That's long settled law.
Isn't there also a long-settled law that it goes back to the Eisentrager case? I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, Johnson versus Eisentrager.
Right. That American citizens who collaborate with the enemy have considered enemy combatants.
They can be. They can be. They're sometimes criminally prosecuted, sometimes treated in the military.
Well, let's talk about can be. I think
under Supreme Court precedent.
Right. There's a Supreme Court decision that said that American citizens who collaborated with Nazi saboteurs were tried by the military. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I think a couple of them were executed.
Yeah.
So if anybody doubts, there's a long-standing history in this country that your constitutional rights follow you wherever you go, but you don't have a constitutional right to turn on your own government and collaborate with the enemy of the nation. You'll be treated differently. What's the name of the case, if you can recall, that reaffirmed the concept that you could hold one of our own as an enemy combatant if they were engaged in terrorist activities in Afghanistan? Are you familiar with that case?
Yeah, Hamdi.
Okay. So the bottom line is, I want every American citizen to know you have constitutional rights, but you do not have a constitutional right to collaborate with the enemy. There's a body of law well developed long before 9/11 that understood the difference between basic criminal law and the law of armed conflict. Do you understand those differences?
I do understand that there are different bodies of law, of course.
What was Flynn's background? Why is this relevant?
Yeah, he's got the Republican nominee and all that, but he's really not facing, it's not a political side of the aisle facing the other side of the aisle and another political ideology. In this case, Republicanism or the idea of being the grand old party versus the Democrat Party, which is bigger government versus smaller government, et cetera. Less taxes versus more taxes. This is Donald Trump facing an opponent, and that opponent is the United States intelligence community. And the United States intelligence community, both inside and outside, are the ones that are manipulating the outcome of what we are going to face over these next couple of months.
But wait a minute, weren't you an integral part of the United States intelligence community?
Yeah. I led one of the largest intel agencies in the world.
And you know these people?
Yeah, I know them very well. I know all of them. And those that I don't know, I know what their roles are, what their positions are, and it's like, why did I only spend 24 days as the national security advisor? Why did the president of the United States, Obama, sit in the Oval Office and scheme with the top security officials of the United States government, to include the current president of the United States, Biden, while he was vice president in the White House on the 5th of January? Why did they scheme to get rid of one guy and in order to get rid of a second guy? And that's, the one guy is Mike Flynn, the second guy is Donald Trump. So they actually schemed, and we know this.
And you have evidence of this.
Oh, total evidence. I mean, there's a ton of evidence, and it was presented in a court and discovered by a special counsel that was designated by the Attorney General, and they were embarrassed by it, and they dismissed my case because of it. So, as I sit here and I look at things, and I look at these movies that are, these documentaries, because Out of Shadows Into the Light are films that they're ways to take a couple of hours of your life and sit there and watch and go, and you're going to say, I now know exactly what has been happening. I now can feel it. I mean, just the layman out there. I mean, I'm talking, as the former, a former a lot of things in my life, particularly in the intelligence business, but not only an assistant director of national intelligence at the national level, leading one of the largest intel agencies in the world, rising to the level of national security advisor. You don't get there, because you're a dummy. In my case, you get there because, you know what you're doing, and the person that you're doing it for trusts that you can do that. And so the level of manipulation that needed to happen in order to do that, if you watch the film Into the Light, you'll understand it. And
it wakes you up.
Oh.
It's the red pill from Matrix. Yeah. It's the opportunity to start evaluating things. I remember when I looked at movies in Hollywood, and I was able to see what worldview is behind this. Mm-hmm. And there were some, and you can tell the difference in the Marvel films. They had one worldview, and now they have a completely different. I defy anyone to watch the original Captain America: The First Avenger and not see, godly Christian worldview in that. But then you look at the modern ones, and you say, what is this garbage? And Into the Light shows you how they're manipulating us.
Why did Admiral Rogers, NSA, meet Trump privately without authorization? Does POTUS know where the bodies are buried? Does POTUS have the goods on most bad actors?
June 2016. FISA request. The Obama administration files a request with the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, FISA, to monitor communications involving Donald Trump and several advisors. The request, uncharacteristically, is denied. October 2016. FISA request. The Obama administration submits a new, narrow request to the FISA court, now focused on a computer server in Trump Tower suspected of links to Russian banks. No evidence is found, but the wiretaps continue, ostensibly for national security reasons. Andrew McCarthy at National Review later notes. The Obama administration is now monitoring an opposing presidential campaign using the high-tech surveillance powers of the Federal Intelligence Services. On Thursday, November 17, 2016, NSA Director Mike Rogers traveled to New York and met with President-elect Donald Trump. On Friday, November 18, The Washington Post reported on a recommendation in October that Mike Rogers be removed from his NSA position. The heads of the Pentagon and the nation's intelligence community have recommended to President Obama that the director of the National Security Agency, ADM Michael S. Rogers, be removed. The recommendation, delivered to the White House last month, was made by Defense Secretary Ashton B. Carter and Director of National Intelligence James R. Clapper Jr., according to several U.S. officials familiar with the matter. In a move apparently unprecedented for a military officer, Rogers, without notifying superiors, traveled to New York to meet with Trump on Thursday at Trump Tower. That caused consternation at senior levels of the administration, according to the officials, who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss internal personnel matters.
Was Trump asked to run for president? Why? By who? Jerome R. Corsi, Ph.D. is currently the founder and CEO of CorsiNation.com. He worked as a senior staff reporter for WND.com for over 25 years. Dr. Corsi worked in banking and finance, establishing investment programs for banks in the United States and worldwide to create financial planning services for their retail customers.
Donald Trump wasn't elected because he was a saint. Donald Trump was elected because he believes in the Constitution. He didn't have to do this job. I wanted you to know that about 3 years ago, and this I'd like everybody to kind of hear, even in the back. About 3 years ago, a group of generals came to me, and it was explained to me they were ready to conduct a coup d'etat. They were ready to move Barack Obama from office with military force. And then a few weeks later, I got another call and said that they were reconsidering. Do you know why they were reconsidering? No, why? Because they talked to Donald Trump. And Trump agreed that he would run. And they agreed that if he would run, they would conduct their coup d'etat as a legitimate process, rooting out the traitors within government. And that pact between the military and Donald Trump has held. As we've been interpreting and watching, and Alex has been following QAnon is military intelligence and close to Trump. And the intelligence we're getting that we've explained on InfoWars really is a lot of the inside script.
Dr. Jan Halper Hayes was a member of the Trump transition team in 2016 and is currently a contractor for the DoD.
The military had actually wanted to get rid of Obama until they talked Trump into running. So then they had to make sure that all that fraud that the Democrats and the rhinos and the whatevers usually do in an election did not happen in 2016. So then let's go to September 12th, 2018, the Executive Order 13848. And you can ask, how did Trump know to write those things to then put in an executive order and even refer to the election of 2020? Because he was fully briefed. He knew that there would be cheating in the midterms. And then he knew that 2020 was going to happen. And the smartest thing that, I don't know if he's ever said this verbatim, but you can't tell people things. You have to make them experience it. You have to show them. And so whether it's just Trump's plan or part of the military that has been trying to get rid of the corruption for decades and decades, the fact is that it is an exceedingly smart plan with awareness. When I said low-hanging fruit, I literally meant at the state level, at the county level, at those state electors, at the, and it's not just Democrats, it's Republicans as well that do not want to admit, because they got in with a little bit of the fraud as well. I'm not sure we're going to have a 2024 election. I don't know that for a fact, and I want to be really...
Step back for a minute. You can't drop the mic on that. Tell us what you...
I wasn't dropping. I was going to go on. I'm not sure. I think there are going to be certain things, and we're a little more than a year away, but one, late October, we're going to see Sidney Powell go to have her day in court in Georgia. Will she bring the Kraken? What will she bring? Who's behind her? Who's providing stuff for her? But the fact that she was able to get that separated out from the other 19, that could be a very, very good trigger. The other thing is we need to look at when the pocketbooks of all people is going to be hurt even more severely, because that will be another trigger. But one thing I know is that even though the military is working behind the scenes and not necessarily announcing everything they're doing, there's a good possibility that that continuation of government with the military in charge will become public knowledge.
End of part 1.